So the frictional view is about how do you in every moment, in every circumstance, have access to an experience of freedom or peace. And one of the ways that Tiff talks about doing that is by relating to, well, first commit to your experience, whatever it is. Your reality is what it is. You are anxious right now. And to embody it, feel it on a visceral sensation level, and then find a way to be kind to that feeling.
Mhm. So what I feel right now is kind of like a tension and maybe an emptiness in my chest area, and like a very slight burning in my face, like a tingling in my face. And this just feels kind of tight and uncomfortable. And then this feels kind of like fearful, I guess, but they're both mildly unpleasant.
So I see the fruitional view as really connecting with that experience of being the witness of that.
Hmm.
That when you connect on an embodied level, when you go to the sensation level, then you're the one experiencing it. But when you start practicing kindness toward that experience, you become the witness.
Okay, so being the witness is an easier place to be, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's less there's less of an emergency when you're the
Hmm.
witness to something intense and difficult.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Is when I feel these kinds of feelings, it does feel like an emergency.
Right. Yeah. So I had an experience last week where I had some pretty acute attachment panics come up, and uh, there's the part of me that is feeling 5 years old in that moment, and that is sobbing, and that feels like the world is ending. And then there is the part of me that is showing up for that 5-year-old experience and offering unconditional presence, kindness, and love. And that aspect is not particularly like the supportive, caring, loving experience does not have a lot of distress in it. Actually, it's a much more settled, relaxed place where the predominant experience is mostly feel kind and compassionate, and I don't, even though there is this intense thing going on, um my main experience, as long as I'm relating to the intensity with kindness, is an experience of compassion instead of an experience of panic. They're
Mhm.
both happening, but it's kind of like, where am I, what perspective or position am I taking in that?
There's a visualization I use to try to do this where I imagine wrapping my discomfort in a warm blanket, and the warm blanket has a very particular quality to it where it's white and fluffy and very soft. So it's like a cloud almost. And I imagine wrapping this discomfort, this uncomfortable, this anxiety, this pain in this warm, fluffy cloud blanket, which is kindness, and just kind of holding it. And
Right.
it's very similar to what you're saying, but for me, the visual and tactile idea of being warm and white and soft and fluffy is like, it helps me, I guess, go through the process of offering kindness to the difficult feeling.
Right. And so I do that on both like a psychological level through what I'm thinking, and also on sort of a embodied level with you're describing some tension in your chest. So I would be visualizing that warm, fluffy blanket while kind of breathing warmth into the area that feels tense and tight and strained. And imagine that the breath is delivering that warmth and care. And I think there's something happening on a physiological level there as well with directing that you breathe into an area, you direct more like oxygen to that area, you really do help it relax, or you provide some kind of a gentle stretch or something. But there's also just a sense of like being really kind, that if this was your little child coming to you and just saying like, I feel really anxious, I don't know why. And what you would do with that you might offer a hug, you might offer some kind words. You probably wouldn't start panicking
Yeah.
and saying like things will never get better. This is the end of the world.
That is what I start doing when it's me, though.
That's what you do to yourself, but you wouldn't do that to your little child, right?
Sure. Hopefully not.
There's a story from I'm trying to remember, is it Robert Schwartz, the IFS?
Schwartz is not Robert, it's something Schwartz, but yeah.
Okay,
I don't
there's
think
a
his name's Robert.
IFS an author who writes about IFS. He wrote like
Oh,
No
Richard
Backs Heart
Schwartz is the
and
creator of
Richard.
IFS. That might
Okay,
be who
it's
you're
Richard
thinking of.
Schwartz. I think it's him. So he tells a story about I think this was about himself, about like a near drowning experience,
Mhm.
and that he thought he might die. And in that moment, he committed to his immediate experience. He embodied it. He was just like, this is my reality. I might be dying right now. And then what he did was offer himself warm, compassionate presence of
Mm.
like, if I'm dying, I'll be right here the whole time. Like, I'll hold you. I'll love you. I'll be right here with you the whole time. And he's just talking to himself. But I feel like that is what this chapter is talking about. This experience of learning to offer compassionate presence no matter what's
Mhm.
going on, and to offer it to yourself.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting when you were talking about breathing into what I'm feeling, that actually did help. So that's not something I normally do, but I tried it in that moment and it did, I feel a little bit better, which is interesting. So it'll be something I'll have to practice.
That's one I use a lot. Yeah. Yeah. So the frictional view is like our circumstances are what they are,
Mm.
and we can gradually do things to try to change them, but in any given moment, the real question is, if I'm ever going to be free, I have to be able to feel free regardless of what's happening that I can't control or change in real time.
Mhm.
So you can practice that in any circumstance, by relating to your current reality with a sense of ease, compassion, warmth, and just accepting it as what it is. I don't
Mhm.
like this. I don't want to feel this, but this is what I'm feeling. This is what's happening.
So one way of expressing it might be that instead of seeking freedom through changing external circumstances, I'm pursuing freedom through changing the way that I relate to my life or my reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also it's wiring in an experience that if you want to feel free, you have to give your brain and nervous system many experiences of being free, which it only ever happens in real time. All the things we want to feel only happen in real time. And so we can work toward future circumstances that we think will make it easier
Mm-hmm.
to embody our experience and be kind and to feel free. And at the same time, the only way our brain ever develops the capacity for it and our nervous system ever develops the capacity for it is if we practice that experience in real time with imperfect circumstances, which is the only kind we'll ever get is imperfect circumstances.
There will always be limitations.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
that's been my experience. And um I mean, I've found that this has made it overall a larger difference in my kind of baseline mood than changing circumstances have.
Hmm.
And I can say that with some confidence because even when really, really difficult things hit, uh, my baseline experience is less troubled than it used to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have an interesting experience along those lines, which is that what I perceive to be the source of my suffering for most of my life has been a difficult marriage. And my difficult marriage has improved dramatically over the past couple of years. And I still experience a lot of anxiety. And so there is something here around like it's almost like my brain has a certain level of anxiety that it wants to experience. And it will find reasons to experience that anxiety even when Like if you would have shown me my marriage today, say 3 years ago, I would be like, oh, then that would solve all the problems.
Sure.
and
Yeah.
and guess what? I still feel like there's problems. And so and so I do think there's some wisdom in what you were saying of, do I actually know how to feel free? Because the truth is, I think it's quite fair to say objectively, there is quite a bit of freedom in my life. There's not limitless freedom, but that's not really a thing anyway. So, but there's plenty of freedom, and I think that I very often feel more constrained than I am actually constrained in reality.
And particularly in close relationships, you might have a lot of freedom in other areas. You might be able to
Mhm.
feel free if you're out in nature on your own or with friends or something. And I would guess that you've been able to feel free in those circumstances since you were a kid. And the thing that would bring up a feeling of not being free is being close to important others.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your brain has all this wiring that says being close to the most important people in my life is a very fraught experience. It's difficult, it's stressful. I have to monitor myself all the time. I have to monitor them all the time. Like, that's how we have to do it. And so this is like just experimenting with does anything get worse if you try dropping that and you experiment with a different way of relating to this that's like, well, being close to important people is maybe an experience of openness, which brings
Mhm.
up panic in me. And this has nothing to do with the other people and a lot to do with um, my own difficulty tolerating the openness of reality.
Yeah. So it's about looking at my response to reality as opposed to looking so much at the actual difficulty of reality, which is, there's an idea that, so these ideas are so hard for me to express, but uh, it could be more beneficial for me to put effort into looking at how I respond to what actually happens in my life, as opposed to putting that same amount of effort into trying to change the actual circumstances of my life. Like there could be a better payoff on the other side of that.
Yeah. And how you think about your position in your life. So if you're thinking, I feel this way because of these problems, and if I can solve these problems, I won't feel this way anymore. That's what you're talking about when you say, if you could go back 3 years and show that guy what your marriage is like now, he'd say, "Oh, problem solved." I'll feel great when it's like that.
He would definitely say that. Yes.
Um, but then the other piece, and I think about it as having a lot to do with brain wiring. It's just like, how many times, if you think of your brain as like a giant field of tall grass, how many times have you walked a path where you are walking toward an important person in your life and experiencing freedom at the same time? And if you've only done this 5 times, then
That's a beautiful way of saying it. So of approaching or getting close to an important person in my life and feeling free.
yeah.
Okay, that's really wonderful because my wife and I had an experience last night. Like we had some good conversations last night, and then we just spent, maybe an hour or so just practicing being open with each other and trying to remain calm and just kind of being close to each other in a very calm way, which is not habitual for us. There's usually a ton of anxiety there, but we were both practicing doing exactly what you're saying, which is I was practicing opening myself up to her and approaching her and stepping into intimacy with her, and I'm feeling free at the
Yeah.
same time. And I experienced that for quite a while, and it was remarkable. Like you said, like maybe I've experienced that 5 times before, but it was felt so unusual, and it really wasn't unusual. But that makes sense. So I have a habit or a pattern of my brain is used to feeling a certain way when I'm in proximity or intimacy with an important person.
Yeah, so you've got like I really like the visual of a big field of tall grass, and you've got this one path
Ah,
that you've walked 20,000 times. And on that path, you routinely ran into loud noises and snakes and scorpions, and
oh, the
it just
snakes.
was
That's
like,
brilliant.
you know,
There were
so it was a
always
pretty
snakes
difficult
in the grass.
experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
you've got all of this brain wiring. It's a very easy, intuitive, automatic pattern for your
Hmm.
brain to follow that when I approach an important person, the path is fraught. It's a
Hmm.
very high anxiety experience. And I'm constrained. I have to be really vigilant and on alert and defensive and all these things. And then you're wanting this experience of freedom and being relaxed. And the more times you
Hmm.
walk this path where you're approaching and you feel free, the easier it is for your brain to do it. You know, the grass gradually gets trampled down and the path becomes clear, and you don't have to wonder with every step, am I still on the path or not? You know, I can't quite see where it goes. So, and at the same time, as you don't walk that reactive path, it starts to grow over and it becomes less and less automatic for your brain to take that path. So you can work on your circumstances, but you also have to work on your ability to tolerate the openness of walking a new path and not knowing, will there be snakes
Hmm.
here or not?
Hmm.
Like, I just don't
Yeah.
know.
Hmm.
So
There. Go ahead.
Tift says that the only way to experience more openness is to expand your capacity to tolerate more panic. Like, you have to tolerate more panic to experience more openness. And openness and freedom are essentially the same thing.
I was imagining an exercise last night of something I could do to try to expand my capacity to tolerate panic, which was I was imagining writing out if this scenario happens to me, this is how I'm going to handle it. Like basically, you know, in specifically scenarios that might happen in my marriage where my wife might have a bad day or she might be critical of me or she might be unhappy in some way or she might withdraw. I've, kind of an anxious attachment pattern. So when she withdraws, that's difficult for me. And so if I could write down, well, this is how I could respond in a healthy way to this scenario and just helping my brain. I saw it as making a new pathway in the tall grass, which is that there is evidence to suggest that I will take good care of myself in that scenario, should it happen, as opposed to the other pathways in my brain, which were often formed when I was too young to really take good care of myself in that kind of a scenario.
Yeah, I really like how you're saying that. This thing of taking good care of yourself, it's also building trust in yourself. Like when you're saying there's evidence that I will, you're saying I trust that about myself. And the
Yeah.
only way to trust that is to give yourself many real-time experiences of doing it.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
I, I do think the exercise you're describing would work for the same reason that like I mean, I used to be a violinist, and you can practice violin by playing a literal violin, or you can do mental practice where you're thinking your way through
Mhm.
the piece. And that has been shown to be effective and beneficial. Same thing with sports. Professional athletes will do this. They'll do mental practice. And so that's what you're describing with this exercise is like mental practice of, okay, I've got a plan for how I'll take care of myself and how I'll you know, have a better experience even if things outside of my control go badly.
Yeah, and it could be me imagining how I might relate to that reality if it happened. So I had a panic about a month ago. Like you talk about abandonment panic. Well, I had an abandonment. I mean, mine was kind of silly, but it did happen where my wife stopped at Target on the way home from work, and I panicked. It sounds silly. I did though. I mean, this really happened. She stopped at Target, and I was pretty anxious about seeing her afterward. So sometimes, because of our work schedules, we can go like all day without barely seeing each other. And so she sometimes works pretty late. And so it was like 8:30 at night. And I was really excited for her to come home and say hi to me. And she went to Target instead. And I had an abandonment panic and it was pretty intense. And so, but that's the thing is the way I relate to that experience matters a lot. And that's what I kind of think it was, kind of take good care of myself in that moment when I'm experiencing an abandonment panic because my wife is a target.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that same thing, I mean, this example, it can sound kind of silly because you're like, I mean, I'm a full adult, I can handle her being a target. But it's the same muscle that you would use if she disappeared, if she left you and never came back, you know?
Mhm.
Like it is
Yeah.
the same thing. And
Yes.
so we practice this in our daily life because the only way to know that someone is going to be there for you is for you to be there for you over and over. Like
Mhm.
that's it. That's all you get as a guarantee is just
Yeah.
it's lovely when other people show up, but this fruitional view is about like how do you give yourself the assurance that you'll always have access to compassionate presence.
Mhm.
And the only way to give yourself that assurance is to give yourself the compassionate presence. You can't control another person being your on-demand comforter, you know, companion, reassurer. It doesn't, at best case scenario, you've got someone who's really kind to you as a partner and you're still not going to spend all your time together. Nobody does.
Yeah. And then someday they might die, you know. So
Right.
there is
Yeah.
there is no free pass. So Tift mentions 3 unconditional commitments that he thinks are useful. Can you tell me about those?
He talks about unconditional immediacy, embodiment, and kindness.
Mhm.
So immediacy is what is happening right now. What are my circumstances? Embodiment is what's happening on a sensation level, on a visceral level in my own body. And your body is kind of your home that whatever your circumstances are, you exist in both your own embodiment and then in the larger container of your circumstances.
Mhm.
And then the unconditional commitment to kindness is I will bring kindness to every moment, regardless of the sensations in my body and regardless of the circumstances that I find
Mhm.
myself in. And I see that as aspirational to do it in every moment. But I see no downsides to it. So it's only helpful as far as I can tell, it's only helpful to practice it, even though probably nobody manages to do it all the time.
I have found immense benefit in practicing kindness, and I kind of have a theory that lack of kindness slows down neuroplasticity, and kindness accelerates neuroplasticity. And I don't have any real scientific basis for that, but it is kind of my experience that when I can practice some sort of kindness or sweet love to what's happening in me, then my brain seems more willing to adapt to my present circumstances. And when I practice something that is more habitual to me, which is kind of like a harsh judgmental stance to what is actually happening into myself, I feel like my brain locks up and just stays there and doesn't want to change or grow.
Yeah, I like how you're framing that, and it makes complete sense to me because neuroplasticity, we have a huge impact on the brains that we're closest to, and we're impacted by the brains we're closest to. And so if you're tracking kindness in someone, it's a much safer thing to accept influence from them. It's a much better idea.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's neuroplasticity is basically the process of accepting influence.
Okay, so you're comparing this. So I was talking about it myself, but you're saying it's the same as now this makes a lot of sense that if someone is if I track kindness in a person, then I am much more willing to accept their influence. And the same way, if I track kindness in myself, then I'm much more willing to accept my own influence. Oh, yeah, that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
Yeah. And so this is part of what makes it hard for people that come from backgrounds where they didn't experience a lot of kindness in their early life um, to grow is that accepting influence is very threatening. And when you track that the people around you don't mean well and they're trying to change you, of course you'll resist it. it's an intelligent thing to resist being changed by people that don't mean well toward you.
If I'm working with a person who comes from a place where there's not much kindness, then they're going to be very resistant to my influence. And if I don't offer that kindness or meaning well, like you were saying, it's really hard for that person to take what I'm saying and actually accept it and take a really good look at it. And when I was a young therapist, I had so many experiences of saying something that was spot on and having the person reject it completely. But it was because of a lack of kindness. And I didn't care enough about the person I was talking to
Right.
make it easier for them to accept what I was saying. And as I've gained experience as a therapist, that happens less and less and less, where people are much more able to accept the things I tell them, even when they're quite difficult things. But I've learned to accompany that with more kindness and care.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is how the fruitional view and the developmental view intersect. That as you develop this fruitional capacity to relate with kindness to your immediate experience, your embodied experience, your reality, whatever it is, then you make it much easier for your brain to map out new possibilities and new solutions to your problems and to actually be able to improve your circumstances. So you need the neuroplasticity. If you're going to improve your life, you need your brain to be malleable. And the best way in on that, and I've tried a lot of ways in on that, and there are different ways to do it, but the most sustainable way is to mean well toward yourself and build trust with yourself so that you can count on your ability to follow through on your goals. The fruitional view is what makes that possible, I think. It's this thing of like, I'm going to practice kindness now.
Mhm.
So one thing that I've thought about here with the embodiment piece, because I have a fair bit of chronic pain that I've had throughout my life, and so the idea of like going into my embodied experience has been pretty difficult for me. I'm like, yeah, I want to stay out of that. I don't necessarily want to feel my sensations. But even there, I've found it's only helpful when I'm willing to do it. You know,
Mhm.
that it isn't about like, you don't have to be having a good experience. You just have to be patient and kind with the experience you're having.
The way I've heard Bruce explain it is, how harmful is this, or is it actually harmful? And I've compared
Yeah.
this to eating a hot pepper, where if I was having Chinese food a week ago and there was a little red pepper in it, and I was like, this won't be that bad. So I just took a bite of, orange chicken with a hot
Ooh.
pepper in it, and I see him salivating talking about this. Right. Within 30 seconds, like my mouth was on fire, but it wasn't really on fire. But I love this because I immediately thought of what Bruce says, which he says, is it really harmful? And so my mouth was
Yeah.
saying harmful, 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 harmful. And I was like, what Bruce would say is, he would say, can you run an experiment and can you find out how harmful it is for as long as the sensation lasts? And so I was like, I'm going to do this experiment. And so my instinct was like, go drink milk, eat some ice cream, put an ice cube on my tongue, run around the house flailing my arms. And I was like, what? I really wanted to do those things and jump up and down. You do all the things we do to try to escape from the intensity of the feeling. And
Yeah.
instead, I was like, can I just stand here and feel what it feels like to have a hot pepper on my tongue for a few minutes? And it lasted about 3 minutes. And I just kept asking myself, is this harmful? Like, is it
Yeah.
harming me? And it feels like it is, but I was like looking for evidence. Is there any evidence of harm? Like, if you're actually burning yourself, then there's evidence of harm. Your skin will blister or there will be some sort of tissue damage. But I could have even gone and looked in the mirror and looked at my tongue, and I could have said, is there any evidence of harm here? And it would have been fine. I could have put my finger on my tongue. Is it actually hot? No, it's fine. And so
Right.
that was a really useful comparison. And now whenever I feel these intense sensations, I think of that hot pepper. And the interesting thing is my intensity tends to last for about 3 minutes. Like the hot pepper lasted for 3 minutes and then it went away. So,
Yeah, that is such a good metaphor for it. Because your instinct is like, I have to immediately change my circumstances. I'll
yes.
drink milk
Oh,
and I'll
I
run around
have
like a
to. I mean, none of those
yeah.
things really work, but at least it feels like
They
you're
don't
trying
work,
to
but I
do
have
something
to.
about it. I have to do it. And like I was literally wanting to jump up and down and, I do these things. It doesn't really help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a Buddhist saying, don't just do something, sit there.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that was exactly what I decided to do in the moment. But it was so hard. Like I still
Yes.
wanted to go through this drama of I'm addressing the problem when there, as I found out, there isn't really any problem. One thing that really stands out to me about Bruce is he's like, don't say there's no problem. He's like, you don't know. And it's almost like you're honoring your feeling by saying, I agree to look at this. Like my mouth says there's a problem. I'm not just going to dismiss it. I'm not going to pretend it's not hurting. I agree to pay attention to the warning, because burning is a warning of tissue damage. And so I agree to look at this, and I will look diligently as long as it happens. And I will ask myself, not in a dismissive way, but is there any damage occurring? And it's
Yep.
like almost a way of caring for myself. Like this feels really dangerous to me. I'm going to pay attention to that, but I'm not going to accept it without investigating. And I'm also not going to dismiss it without investigating. It's like a non-judgmental approach.
And there's also no harm if you want to, while you're doing that, also be like, I'm going to run an experiment on, does it help to drink some milk? Does it help to have some ice cream?
Sure. Yeah.
No problem. There's no
Yeah.
harm in that. Like,
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of things we can do on kind of a comfort level that maybe they're not necessary, maybe they don't even change it. But if you prefer to have something you're doing while you find out if this is harming you, okay. It's just about, can you choose this instead of automatically rushing into it?
Yeah. And I think in a relationship, the equivalent of drinking milk and eating ice cream is actually things that we do that can be quite harmful. So if I feel intensity and I blame it on my wife, and then I go and I try to address it externally in the relationship in some way, that does tend to make things worse. Whereas like drinking milk
Right.
is probably not that harmful.
Yeah. I mean, so a lot of this stuff with relationships, it basically is this very, very core attachment panic.
Mhm.
Um, and so like when that was coming up for me recently, I tried to take a direct hit on it as a conscious choice. There's different comfort things I could do to distract myself or get myself out of that intensity. And I kind of chose, I'm not going to do that right now because this is basically a question coming from part of my brain that is really young, that hasn't been updated since I was about 5, apparently,
Mhm.
that is
Sure.
still asking this question of, is there anyone I could count on to be there for me? Like, am I all alone in this? And by just staying present and not getting myself out of that intensity, but instead committing to it and saying, I'm going to be right here and I'm going to be this compassionate presence for myself throughout, I feel like I could settle that question at a level I've never been able to before, to where the answer was, yes, there is. I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way
And
you
it's
just said
so
that.
comforting.
You just said that with so much like confidence. You're like, I am here. Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is the most comforting thing. It's actually more comforting than having a partner be there for you because again, your partner is not always there for you. Like
Yeah.
even if they're the best partner on earth and you have the happiest marriage that's ever been, sometimes you're driving alone and you get in a car accident, you know?
Yes. And
Like
sometimes they go to Target. And I mean,
how dare they?
so rude.
Sometimes you're at your job and you get fired and they'll be there when you get home, but they won't
Mhm.
be there in that acute moment where you're getting fired. And who's going to
Yeah.
be there for you then? Like the only option here is you. I think that's why it's so worthwhile to develop a deep compassion for yourself because you always have access to it and there's no other way that you could always have access.
Yeah. I think we should leave it there.
Okay. Great talking to you, James.
That was such a great conversation. Thank you, Catherine. I'll talk to you again soon.